I'll never get how the religious get morality so completely wrong. Well, actually I will, because they're not really thinking about it. They're just rationalizing to their already irrational beliefs and insisting that they're right, even if they can't back any of it up. So here goes Greg Koukl's version, and why Greg hasn't got a clue what morality is or how it works. Coming up next. Let's be honest, Stands Against Reason is a joke. But they're a very prolific joke, and if you want a one-stop shop for all of the stupidity of modern-day Christianity, it's hard to find a better place than the lunatics at STR. Every bad religious trope that you could hope for, the closed comments, the quick to fail and admit defeat, but they still want your money attitude, because they always want your money, they're just training warriors for Christ with really low expectations. That's kind of funny if you think about it. So this time out, we look at Greg Koukl trying to justify the religious views of morality, but he hasn't got a clue how reality works, so of course he's going to fail. Badly. As usual. What else is new?
Confidence for every Christian, clear thinking for every challenge, and courage and grace for every encounter.
Now, I want to stop it right there. Yeah, I know that's just the opening that they shove on a lot of videos, but when you have as much experience with Stands Against Reason as we do around here, we know that every bit of that is laughable nonsense. Courage? What courage? STR tells people that if they don't succeed immediately, to run away screaming. It tells them to be satisfied with failure. Apparently, God isn't on their side because they're doing a piss-poor job. All religious apologists are. If they actually had anything rational to say, this channel wouldn't exist. Yet hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos in, and we're still going strong. Really, what's wrong with these people?
I want to talk just a few moments about the issue of God and morality, because I think the arguments that Christians have offered in favor of God based on the existence of morality have been misunderstood, principally by atheists, but also by some Christians, okay?
Okay, but it isn't that they haven't been understood, it's that they've been wholly irrational. This is what happens when you entirely lack the capacity to step back and actually listen to the crazy things coming out of your mouth from any perspective but your own. You people sound crazy, and when we pointed out that you sound crazy, instead of being able to look at your own beliefs critically and intelligently, you assume that we didn't understand you. No, we got it. You're just nuts.
Here's the way the argument goes. If there is no God, there is no objective morality. But there is objective morality, that would be evidenced by the problem of evil, therefore there must be a God.
Yet, every single part of that falls apart under even the most cursory of evaluation. So let's back it up a little bit. He starts off by saying that without God, there can be no objective morality. Says who? Why not, without Zeus, there can be no objective morality? Or without the flying spaghetti monster, there can be no objective morality? You're just making an unsubstantiated claim, and you have to prove that claim is true. Do something. Make an attempt. Seriously, you really can't fail this bad unless you try. Secondly, Greg just baldly asserts that there is an objective morality. Again, says who? That's just a claim not backed up by any evidence of any kind. It's what Greg wants to be true, but just because he wants it to be true, that doesn't mean that it is true. I cannot think of any credible definition of objective morality where that claim stands up to any kind of scrutiny whatsoever. So you take two really dumb claims, not supportable in any rational way, and then pretend you're saying something worthwhile. Sorry, Greg, it just doesn't work that way. All the faith in the world isn't going to convince anyone with half a clue that you're right.
Now, there's a lot I could say about this, but let me address myself specifically to the confusion, because atheists are quick to object that you're saying I can't be moral if I don't believe in God. And that is not our point.
No, we don't say that. A lot of Christians say that about atheists, but atheists certainly don't. At least I haven't seen any actually saying something like that. Because clearly we can be moral, and we demonstrably are moral. In fact, we are more moral than the religious. You don't see us throwing innocent people off of roofs because of who they're attracted to. You don't see atheists trying to blow up religious monuments in order to bring about the end of the world. You don't see atheists acting because of their atheism, murdering millions in the name of their imaginary friends. We're not shooting abortion doctors. We're not killing children in Africa to use their body parts in religious ceremonies. We are vastly underrepresented in prison populations, while the religious are vastly overrepresented based on societal percentages. You don't see atheists as a group trying to cover up the sexual misdeeds of our public speakers. If Richard Dawkins molested a kid, atheists would collectively hunt his ass down and deliver him to the authorities. So where are these moral theists again? I'm really not seeing them.
Our point is, if there is no God, morality has no meaning.
And that's still a completely unjustified statement presented with no evidence, and therefore it means absolutely nothing at all. If there are no invisible, intangible, universe-creating pixies, then morality has no meaning. You want to buy into that? Me either. Why? Because anyone can make a claim. Let me know when you can back yours up.
And the quickest way I can get to that point is to offer a challenge offered by the late Christopher Hitchens, one of the new atheists. And he said, tell me one good thing that you can do as a theist that I can't do as an atheist. That's a fair charge. But notice how it focuses on behavior. Can he do the same behaviors that we do? And the answer is yes, he can. That's not the issue.
Yet Hitchens, at least so far as I know, never engaged in any terrible behaviors that demonstrably harmed anyone else, whereas the religious do so all the time. It's why I've been asking for many years for one thing, just one thing, that is demonstrably true, that religion gives the world that cannot be achieved as well or better through purely secular means. And the religious have no answers for that. But let's see what Greg has to say. This ought to be good.
The issue is whether the behaviors are good or not without God.
And they are, because good and evil are determined by society, and demonstrably so. Greg and his band of idiots simply declare, again with no evidence whatsoever, that God had to be involved. Says who? Because I know I keep going back to this, but it's really the only point that really matters. I don't care what you believe. I care what you can prove. All the faith in the world doesn't make an irrational and unjustifiable claim suddenly rational or justifiable. That takes evidence and logic and reason, three things that the religious are entirely lacking. Put up or shut up, Greg. It's too bad that you're incapable of either.
So let me offer another illustration. I'll use Christopher Hitchens. What if Christopher Hitchens said, I don't believe in writers? And I said, well, if you don't believe in writers, then how can you read?
And this is yet another case of Greg not paying the slightest bit of attention to what's coming out of his mouth. Now, first, let's point out that Hitchens never said that and would never say that because it's stupid. But even if he did, he didn't say, for example, that writing doesn't exist. He said that writers don't exist. Writing can exist without anyone to write it in the modern world. We can read Latin and Swahili, but nobody is out there right now writing it. But we can go even further here because we can demonstrate a direct causal link between writing and someone who writes. You can't do that with your imaginary friend and morality. One is a well-supported statement backed up with evidence, and one is an intellectually empty, faith-based claim based entirely on wishful thinking. Seriously, Greg, give up while you're behind.
And he says, I can read anything just as good as you can read, maybe even better.
And he'd be right, but you've taken a really stupid position here and invented a really stupid scenario that demonstrates even more clearly how ridiculous your asinine beliefs are, Greg. The fact that you can't get that through your head just shows how much smarter Christopher Hitchens, even this imaginary version of him, is compared to you. Hell, a cuttlefish is smarter than Greg is.
Well, you see, the point isn't who can do the behavior more effectively. The point would be whether there's anything to read without writers.
And when we get to the point where computer artificial intelligence is writing books, will you count those as writers too? This is a really idiotic analogy, Greg. Stop failing so pathetically.
Now, this is called the grounding problem. What makes morality possible? What does it sit on, so to speak?
Humans. That's what we can demonstrate that morality rests on. You desperately want to shove your imaginary friend in there, but you can't prove that your imaginary friend is real. Faith is not impressive at all. If you get to interject faith, well, so does everyone else. Any kind of rational discourse vanishes if anyone can just make up anything they want to explain anything they don't understand, and they don't have to back any of it up with objectively verifiable evidence. That's what we keep asking for, and Greg and his band of idiots entirely refuse to come through. I can't imagine why.
Reading depends on writing. Writing depends on writers. That's the grounding problem with reading.
And it's demonstrable. Now, let's see your proof for the claim you're about to make next.
Morality, being good, depends on there being morals, moral laws, and moral laws require a moral law maker.
Not supported, because there are tons of morals out there that I think we'd agree are not moral, at least from our perspective, yet they certainly do exist. There are people out there who point to the morals that we, as Americans or people in the West, hold dear, and they think that those are immoral. It's a difference of opinions. Human opinions, not divine opinions, because there's no evidence for the divine. But like every single religious philosophical argument, it goes from, here's this claim, to, therefore, God did it. There's a lot of stuff in the middle that has to be filled in, and the religious have nothing intelligent to put there. Imagine that.
If there is a moral lawmaker, then there are moral laws, and both the Christian and the atheist can do good things regardless of their beliefs, because there are good things to do.
Now, prove that anything is inherently good. Go ahead. Be prepared to show your work, because that's exactly where all of this falls apart. Greg and his religious cabal are convinced that the set of moral beliefs that they happen to personally like were ordained by some magical man in the sky, and that makes those things good. You know, absurd confirmation bias. And anything that they don't like, well, those things are bad. Why? Because they don't like them, and they've stapled on a God explanation to back themselves up. That doesn't mean God had anything to do with it or even exists in the first place. It's just a wild appeal to an authority that they can't even prove is real. And they wonder why nobody takes them seriously.
But if there is no God, then there are no morals, then there are no good things.
Which is complete nonsense, because apparently humans can and do make up morals all the time. Now, Greg will say, well, those are just subjective. Well, yes, they are. So what? Because you can't prove, not believe, not have faith, but prove that there's any morals out there that aren't subjective. You don't just get to declare that the things that you like are just handed down from on high without being able to back it up. And Greg can't back it up. You've got a lot of work to do, Greg. Get busy.
You can still do the same behaviors, but they're not good for the theist or the atheists. That's the point.
So, for the, Hindu who says that without Krishna there are no morals, does that mean that Christians can't do good without belief in Krishna? Because, Krishna is required as a moral lawgiver. Just ask the Hindus. Honestly, what the hell is wrong with people like Greg? And this goes for everyone who holds these bizarre beliefs that they can't back up. It's why they don't talk to actual atheists. They just talk to blind believers about atheists. And usually they just make things up about atheists. They're not accurately talking about atheists. It's just standing a straw man up against a wall so they can knock it down without having anyone disagree. Because if they talk to actual atheists, we'd wipe the walls with them. We'd expose all of their irrationality and absurd preconceptions and force them to back up their claims with objectively demonstrable evidence, things they simply can't do. So they'd fail every single time, and they know it. That's why they don't do it. They have nothing to gain and everything to lose. It's why they hide in their echo chambers and turn off their comments and pretend that we're not real. We're just boogeymen, things to scare their parishioners with. But they're wrong, and that's why the religious are hemorrhaging members left and right. It's why Southern Baptists, and that's what Greg and his ilk are losing members rapidly. They're down to their lowest point in more than 30 years, and studies show that only half of children raised Southern Baptist remain in the church. They're losing badly, and that's why they hide. It's why they pretend that they can win, even when all of the evidence shows otherwise. Stands against reason is failing. It has failed. It's dead men walking, and it doesn't know it yet. The faster we can shuffle these religious zombies off into a well-deserved grave, the better. The world will be better off without them. So let's work on that, shall we?
Bum